Well, welcome to Coffee with Job. You'll notice some changes. First of all, I'm not outside because it's chucking it down rain and windy. And believe it or not, it's cold. So, as I said before, this global warming in Australia is really going well. And so I've come inside, and you've got the typical Zoom background for a pastor or indeed a journalist or most politicians, a bookshelf. Several times Annabelle's had to say to me, you left this, you left that, and people can find out lots, but we're here really to look at God's word. And one of the things I'm very encouraged by is the number of you who've got in touch. I'm not encouraged by this just to say you're really struggling with some things and you find this really helpful. And that's because I think I can empathize with that to some degree. Job certainly can, and you can empathize with Job, but the solution to Job in terms of Christ, that's where all this points us. Now, where we are in chapter 13, Job still replying, and this is a pretty desperate prayer. He turns from speaking to his friends to speaking to God, and this is what he says. Verse 20, "Only grant me these two things, God, and then I will not hide from you. Withdraw your hand far from me and stop frightening me with your terrors. Then summon me and I will answer, or let me speak and you reply to me. How many wrongs and sins have I committed? Show me my offence and my sin. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy? Will you torment a wind-blown leaf? Will you chase after dry chaff? For you write down bitter things against me and make me reap the sins of my youth. You fasten my feet in shackles. You keep close watch on all my paths by putting marks on the soles of my feet. So man wastes away like something rotten, like a garment eaten by moths." Wow, wasting away. Now, the first thing in this actually to encourage is that you can go to God in prayer and you can bring your complaints, you can lament. You can tell him, and you can question. I don't think what Job does here is wrong. It's limited because of what he sees, or rather what he doesn't see. And what's he saying? He's saying, give me a break, withdraw your hand from me, just give me some relief. And then in verse 22, he says, let me speak to you. Let me come into your presence. Just don't be silent. What have I done? Show me, what have I done? How many wrongs? Show me my offence and my sin. Which, by the way, is an extremely dangerous prayer. Most of us go on with a kind of casual sense of our sin, maybe even justifying ourselves. If God was really to show us our sin, I think we would be utterly overwhelmed. Which is why I think at times of revival, there are physical manifestations, often, where people collapse with just the sheer weight of what they're seeing. Sometimes you see the glory of God, but sometimes you see your own sinfulness. Why don't you speak, he says. I've asked my friends to be quiet. They keep speaking, but why don't you speak? Is this because of the sins of my youth? Is that why you're hiding your face? And then he asks in verse 26, what are you really like? You write down bitter things against me. Why are you like a doctor giving bitter medicine or a judge giving bitter punishment? For the sins of my youth. That was a long time ago. And I think in Job's mind, there's this dreadful fear. And remember, Satan is the accuser, and the person he wants to accuse most is not you, but God. Did God really say? And he wants Job to feel this dreadful thing. What if the God I've placed my faith in is really a monster? By refusing to speak to me, he says, you're making me like a prisoner, boxing me in, making me impossible for me to solve my dilemma. He feels fragile, he's decaying, he feels worthless, he's paranoid and in despair. He's like a wind-blown, dry, fragile leaf. His feet are in the stalks. He'd thought his sin was covered. Remember, in the beginning, he sacrifices to cover his sin. He thought it was covered, and clearly it wasn't. Well, what's the answer? Well, as we go deeper into the pit, remember this, Job didn't have Job. He didn't have the book of Job. And he certainly didn't have the Gospels. And that's where we need to turn. And yesterday I did an interview, and I've started up a new podcast, and I'll try and put up a link to this, called the Ask Podcast. And I did an interview with the author of this book, Christians, which I really want to highly commend to you, from Greg Sheridan, who's the foreign editor of The Australian. And we're going to do a series of discussions. And in chapter 1, he ends chapter 1 of his book, Christians, the Urgent Case for Jesus in Our World, with this. And let me finish by reading this. He begins chapter 1, this is just brilliant, by the way, with the cross, the death of Jesus, which he considers to be the greatest event in human history. So let me read this, then I'm done. Greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. We all have our cross. A perfect life looks perfect only from a distance. Flaws in a life invisible from far away are evident from close by, and may be overwhelming for those inside the life. But whatever the flaws, we all also have the unbreakable promise of the new life that the one cross has brought us. God bless you, and see you tomorrow.